Hello everyone. Now it's time to take a tour to the Uranus with Ayush on board.
Am I audible? Okay. Thank you, Asta, for this brief introduction. Now let's quickly jump into this session and have an in-depth view of this planet Uranus. So Uranus, the coolest sun of the solar system family. Uranus is still very lonely destination and been visited by only one space craft that's known as Voyager 2. And during this, owing to this very less discoveries and very less voyages to the planet, a very limited information about this planet is known. But as for the space enthusiast, a very limited introduction, a very limited information is also a vast ocean for us. So the name Uranus, am I audible? So Uranus, as stated, is the coolest sun in the solar system family. We'll find later on why it's called so. So the name Uranus comes from the Greek word Uranus, which means god of the sky, and which later on becomes on Uranus. It is the only planet whose Greek name is directly derived from a figure of Greek mythology. But this name was not reached until almost 70 years after its discovery. It was initially named Georgium Sidus, as you can see, in the honor of the King George III, which was at his time in which the planet was discovered. Uh, some astronaut even proposed the name Neptune George III. Until 1782, it was finally named Uranus. And furthermore, Uranus is the first planet to be discovered with the aid of a telescope. We may see very distant planets and stars at night, and conduct a number of stargazing sessions at night. So today, with the help of modern telescope, we can find very distant galaxies as well as planets. But at the earlier times, when the telescope were of very low power, Uranus could be seen very clearly at that time. And firstly, it was thought to be a comet. Uranus was discovered by Sir William Herschel in 1781 as it's the first planet to be discovered. So now let's talk about some of the basic and must-to-know facts about Uranus. And it is the replica of the telescope which you can see in the screen. Is Sir William Herschel who discovered the planet. As you can see, he's a German-born British astronomer and was appointed as a astronomer by King George III. Now let's look upon its size. Talking about its size, Uranus is about 4 times wider than Earth. As you can see, as it's let's compare it with Earth. Talking about if Earth were as large as an apple, then Uranus would be as large as the size of a basketball. As it is a gas giant, so the word gas giant means that it's one of the largest planets in the solar system, and it is the third largest planet after Jupiter and Saturn. Talking about its period of rotation and revolution, Uranus takes about 17 days to rotate once around uh, itself, and about 84 years to orbit once around the sun. So we can see that the period of rotation, that means the time period of one day, is very less, but the time period of an year is very large. So Uranus, maybe just because Uranus is about 20 astronomical units away from the sun, we can see that the spacecraft Voyager 2 took about 9.5 years to reach the orbit of Uranus. Let's see the temperature of the Uranus. Uranus has recorded one of the lowest surface temperature in the solar system that may range from 153 Celsius to minus of 218 degrees Celsius. It's a very cold planet. Now, it's a very mysterious and a very strange fact about Uranus that its tilt. Uranus rotates sideways. Uranus has a strange axial tilt of 97.77 degrees. This gives a seasonal changes completely unlike of the other planets. This also results in continuous sunlight for 42 years and continuous air of darkness for 42 years for each pole. Some astronomers believe that Uranus was being hit by a celestial body in its early days that gave rise to its strange tilt. Now, as there is gravity on the Earth's surface, there is gravity on any celestial surface, then we must also have a look on the gravity that acts on the Uranus surface. Any object on Uranus would experience 89% of the gravity experienced on Earth. It would uh, it would be around 89% of the gravity that we may experience on Earth. That means if we weigh 50 kg on Earth, then we must be weighing about 44.5 kgs on Uranus. So it's possible due to some of the reasons we'll discuss soon. And why would a planet like Uranus with mass about 14 times than the Earth pulls less gravity than Earth? It's because of its density. Uranus is one of the least dense planet in the solar system. Venus has a density of 1.27 gram per cc. Then let's look up on the surface of the Uranus. If you're planning to land on Uranus surface, I'll suggest you to think twice because its surface can't be visited by any spacecraft. If tried to do so, it will sink to its core. Uranus has no solid surface, and its surface is mainly composed of gases like water, ammonia, and methane. And it's the gas methane which makes it look blue. Uh, some planets like Saturn and Uranus have rings around it. So Uranus also have rings around it. It has 13 rings around it that are designated as you can see in the screen. The rings of the Uranus are relatively younger and not more than about 600 million years old. This picture, which you can see on the screen, shows the ring scheme of Uranus. Only the bold lines represent its rings, and the dotted lines, which you can see on the screen, are the orbit of the moons of the Uranus. So, as stated before, Uranus has moons. Like most of the planets in the solar system, Uranus has moons too. It has 27 moons. They have been named mostly after the characters from the works of William Shakespeare and Alexander Pope. Uranus moons are divided into three groups: inner moons, major moons, and irregular moons. Now let's see some of the most challenging and some of the most asked questions uh, about Uranus. Like, does Uranus support life? Are there any life forms existing on it? Maybe, but probably not. Because there are few problems, let's look at these. Like, first, Uranus has no solid surface, and the atmosphere in the Uranus is composed of hydrogen and helium, and then it's covered by an atmosphere of helium, as we have discussed. And second, Uranus is a very really cold, so it's really tough for any life form to exist there. Like in on Earth, many of the organisms, like some of the viruses and the bacteria, live in the cold season, in the cold surfaces as well as in the volcanic heatness. But it's less probable for an organism to exist in such a lower temperature with with over minus of 200 degrees Celsius. So if if we can still find any place with a sufficient temperature to for a life form to exist, still there is one problem that may exist. Like there is very high pressure in the Uranus that would crush any life form. And some of the other problem is that life on Earth requires sunlight, but there is not sufficient sunlight on Uranus because of its great distance from the sun. And let's look on the Uranus explorations and missions which have led to the great discoveries which we are discussing today. Now, let's talk about its missions. Voyager 2 made its closest approach to the Uranus on January 24, 1986. It was a path-breaking mission which led to one of the most basic discoveries in the surface and the orbits of Uranus. Most of the major discoveries about Uranus are done by Voyager 2. This is the Voyager 2, as what you can see on the screen, and it's also found that 10 also it also has found that there are 10 more moons on the Uranus orbits, which have later added on to the number of 27. Uranus is visited mostly by Voyager 2, but presently there are six major missions that are proposed to study the phenomenon in the Uranus. They are, which you can see on the screen. The firstly is mission concept to Uranus. First is Muse. The space agency is ESA, and the orbiter and its type is orbiter and atmospheric probe. It will study the orbits of Uranus and the atmospheric conditions existing on the Uranus. Second is Oceanus. It's proposed by NASA and JPL collaboratively, and it's an orbiter spacecraft which will study the orbital properties of Uranus. Third is Ordinus. It is proposed by ESA, and it's a type of twin orbiter. And one of the major and most biggest uh, missions proposed by NASA is NASA Uranus Orbiter Probe. That's supposed by NASA, and it's supposed to find the orbit and the atmospheric conditions over there. And the second last is Uranus Pathfinder. It is an orbiter and interplanetary flyby probe that's supposed by CNSA, and it's also a flyby probe. So thank you for this great session. I hope you have learned much about this strange planet. Thank you.